Hello, and welcome to the Irish Cage podcast. You be laughing all the time when we start this, Christopher.
It was just a wee smirk.
A wee
Carry on,
smirk.
Dave.
I don't
Your
think- I don't-
beautiful intro.
I don't think Dave wants you to be happy.
No.
Well, fair enough. Well, hello everybody. Thanks for tuning in again. It's a Friday night, fellas.
It is indeed, Dave.
Friday night lights and all that carry on. This is what we're doing with ourselves.
Yep.
No extravagant outings or anything. We're in a shed recording a podcast. So
What else would you want to do with your Friday night?
That's it, Dad.
There's nothing else that you'd rather be at.
Exactly. We're going to talk football again, fellas. It's just three of us in, myself, Vesty, Crippy, the usual suspects for the football.
Well, what's going on?
Not so bad, lad, aye. All good. Dave's just out of work. Nice wee 5-hour shift.
Flat out.
I seen him down there, you know.
Aye,
Funny enough, you were with me there, Dave, when we actually went down and seen him.
We were lurking about.
He was doing some crazy parking.
Parking was good.
His parking
Uh-huh.
was good.
And for anyone out there listening, Vesty's got a new car.
Aye.
I do, yeah.
Podcast doing well for you, Vesty, isn't it?
Podcast. Paid for by Irish Case Podcast.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Aye, that's actually a
I
thing.
should probably check that the check hasn't bounced just yet.
Aye.
Oh, it's bounced.
Taxman's after you, Vesty. No, we're back in to cover our usual football stuff. Obviously, we've already did our wrap up. It's come out for the month of February, so we're back to sort of doing our kind of historically kind of topics. Me and Vesty were talking a wee bit about doing some outside the box, maybe like specific things that we're going to cover over I was sort of talking about maybe like the youth setup in Germany and a few things like that. So that might be coming a wee bit later down the line.
We're going to have a wee think on that there and try and see what way we can go about doing it, but something a bit different in some terms of what we've been doing. So that'll be a nice take on something different.
We'll switch it up a good wee bit. You know, we'll try and cover a wide range of things, to be fair. But we're in tonight to talk a wee bit of historical football.
We are.
We've decided it's the topic tonight is we decided to pick a team each, and a really good team that never really achieved its full potential or didn't win any trophies or anything like that there. So we've all picked a different squad. We're going to cover a few years and what happened and how good the team was and stuff like that there, and you know why they didn't succeed or
Mm-hmm.
things like that.
Yeah.
Aye. So we've won for three teams that basically didn't fulfill the potential.
Yeah.
No, for one reason or another, my team just seemed to run into bad luck really more than anything else. They did quite well on a couple of occasions, but you know never got anything out of it. Things like that. So that was the idea around the topic. So I think we know everybody's done here, but
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah. Well,
so does anybody
jump
want
right
to
in there.
start us off there then, fellas?
I will. I have the only club side, so I'll jump right in and leave the internationals to them.
Aye, me and Vesty went international for our...
We have indeed.
Well, I've decided to go for Maurizio Pochettino's Tottenham Hotspur, and a recent enough team. Poch only left obviously this season.
I was sort of thinking maybe somebody would jump in on top of the Spurs.
They've got well, Pochettino. He was I'm looking at Spurs from the period of 2014 to 2019, and just how that team wasn't able to win anything.
Not one trophy, like.
Uh-huh.
Like in that time period from 2014 to 2019, Arsenal 2 cups, Manchester United 3 cups, Liverpool 2 cups, City and Chelsea loads.
Aye.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Out of the top 6, how Spurs over the last, from 2014 to 2019, have been a better team probably than Manchester United, been a better team than Arsenal.
They've probably been a better team
than
than
Liverpool.
us for a period
They
of that.
have, like, they've been up there, and they just haven't been able to take, they've won nothing. Now what's happened, they were beat by Chelsea in the League Cup final in Poch's first season. They were beat 2-0. They also came close in the 2015-16 season. They crumbled in a 2-horse race and ended up finishing 3rd with Leicester.
Aye, that's right. Aye.
So, basically after the new year, they were sitting, they'd sort of picked Leicester and they'd jumped up the top of the table, and it looked like this was going to be their year. And then coming up the end of the season, they sort of crumbled, and Leicester ended up winning, and Arsenal came second, and I think they lost in the final day of the season to give second to Arsenal.
Wasn't it Chelsea v Spurs that gave Leicester the title on the Monday Night Football or something?
It was Chelsea versus Spurs.
I think like Hazard scored that screamer of a goal. Was it a one? Was it a victory or else a draw? Basically,
No, it was a Chelsea win.
a Chelsea win, and that then everybody, you could see all like the players celebrating, like Vardy in the house and all in the videos celebrating. And,
It must be a crazy thing too, sort of a segue there, but it must be a crazy thing too to win the league like that. where you're just sort of sitting at home and then all of a sudden
Aye.
you've won the league.
I'm sort of thinking like with the Liverpool situation at the minute, like I would like Liverpool to win it at home. You know, maybe
Aye.
there was talk of maybe winning it at Everton or winning it at Man City, but I always find it would be weird like winning it elsewhere because you don't have the whole crowd behind you and you
Aye.
don't have the the full support. You know that route.
I mind.
Yeah.
I
But
mind.
that would be even more crazy. You know, you're not even playing a game and.
I mind with that game because I think all of us when that season happened when Leicester were going on to win the league, we were all intrigued and we were all behind Leicester. Like,
Oh,
But-
aye.
but there
That was a fairy tale story. Like,
I'll
Aye.
give you a bit of credit there. If
Escape,
you sort of called it like pre-Christmas, you were like, no, they're going to do it. You were on the bandwagon.
No,
like, they're gonna-
aye. Sometimes you can just tell by the way a team's playing and by the confidence behind them, and you can just tell like that no one's going to stop this team. Like,
Nobody's scared them. I think Arsenal was the only team that actually beat them twice in the season.
We beat them once.
You
I
beat
think.
them once, but
Aye.
Arsenal stumped them twice. And apart from that, I think they beat City away like in a 4-1. Like they beat City away at the Etihad like 4-1 or 4-2 or something. Like, but I just before we'll let you get on, but I just think that I remember watching that the night that Chelsea beat them, and I was sort of thinking, actually, I would rather they don't win it tonight. I would like to see them do it at the home ground, like.
aye.
But it was a strange one. But
That was the close call, like, wasn't it? Really, that was the one that you were thinking.
No, well, that was probably the closest that they came to win it. Where they should have won it.
They were the best team,
Realistically,
probably.
They were the best team that season. They should have won it, but they didn't. And then it was more like in 2017 they finished second. It was their only time finishing second. They finished second behind Chelsea. They finished with 86 points, and it was the highest league finish from 1954. And it was one of those, if it wasn't for Conte's Chelsea being Conte's Chelsea,
Yeah.
that it went on and won it that year. For that couple of year period, that Spurs team were fantastic. They played some great exciting football, high pressing football, and you had Dele Alli, prime Harry Kane, before the injuries, and even then,
Wasn't even like Kyle Walker and Danny Rose.
Like their back line was the best back line in the league, bar none. They had Vertonghen and Alderweireld. They had Kyle
Rose,
Walker,
yeah.
Danny Rose, Trippier, Davies as backups, and the team was just fantastic. Like,
Aye. Even like you had the likes of like Wanyama and stuff contributing, and
and that was Moussa Dembele back when Moussa Dembele was still
Yeah.
unbelievable. Like Dembele was a class midfielder, fantastic.
that was the Dele Alli kind of playing off
Yeah.
of Harry Kane and bagging a ton of goals.
Aye,
Like,
then Moussa and Wanyama kind of holding, and
you didn't always want to.
Ericsson and
Yeah.
that team.
You didn't always want to admit it to maybe like the likes of other boys like Matty and all supporting.
Aye, we have a couple of Spurs fans that are friends, so you don't
Aye.
like giving them the ups, but when you
It
look
was good
back
to
on
watch
it now,
them.
Pochettino's gone, that era is over. Mourinho's crumbling, so we can look back and just say, how did that team not win anything?
Aye.
Not a League Cup, not an FA Cup.
See, there's
the thing is now too is like
We won 3 trophies in that period, and we were terrible.
I mean, I can see what Pochettino. I could see what Pochettino was getting at. Like for a club, for Spurs, it was very key to them to make sure that they were qualifying for the Champions League every year because of the financial, benefits
Aye.
of playing in Europe.
Yeah.
And I mean, really and truly, like finishing in the top 4 is better than winning. Actually, it's better than winning a League Cup and an FA Cup because of the financial implications. But it's just one of them things. It's like you kind of there's only 4 trophies you can go for, and it's like
And for
you
a lot
do
of
want
teams,
one.
there's only 2. Like that's what annoys me about teams, like smaller teams, sort of like putting out weakened teams in the FA Cup and stuff. It's like, right, you're not going to win the league. Aston Villa,
Aye.
or well, they have, but they got to the cup final or whatever. But you know what I mean, like
Aye.
and Everton or something. You're not going to win the league. Why? And you're not going to get relegated.
Yeah.
So why don't you just put your full strength team out and go and win an FA Cup?
I think
You know what I mean?
I think on that note, it's like Newcastle have actually made it to the next round of the FA Cup for the first time in yonks. Like,
Aye.
they're a team that should have some sort of trophy. They haven't even a League Cup or FA Cup to their name.
It's difficult to win them. Like I mean,
In
Man
recent
City.
years.
There's been teams that have been quite
Forever
good
even.
domestically. This last couple of years, Man City have kind of cleaned up as well. But I remember Pochettino coming out with some things like winning cups only build ego or something. But you need to get into a
Aye.
habit of
And that mentality of winning.
yeah.
Like Pep Guardiola come in, and yes, City have 2 squads. Like,
Aye.
their bench 11s is almost as good as their starting 11. But Pep come in and he takes every cup seriously. Like, he happy to clean up all the league cups, clean up all the FA cups, clean up everything because it builds that winning mentality.
I think that sort of attitude where them, like you're saying there, maybe like teams aren't taking the cup seriously. Like the League Cup has always been sort of up in the air as to
the League Cup's maybe not a serious.
Oh, aye,
but
yeah.
It's the big three. Like, you want to win like the FA Cup or the Champions League or maybe the Europa League, whichever way you're in.
That's the
and
point.
then the league, like.
That's the point I was sort of going to make there. Is like if you go back, say 12 years ago, whatever it was, the Carling Cup or the Worthington Cup, like people used to say that if United won that, was the only trophy won that year, it'd be a bad year for them. And then you always sort of had that, like if say a Spurs won it back in 2008, 2009 when they won it, the last trophy, they sort of think that they take that with a fair bit of credit. They do actually kind of appreciate that. But it's that whole attitude that the Worthington Cup as it was, people looked at it and thought it was a trophy that wasn't really worth much. I think a lot of that now is starting to come into the FA Cup. Like the FA Cup's almost now as baggage, and that's absolutely awful.
Especially considering
so
back
bad.
in the day, the FA Cup was more watched than the league and more popular than the league. Like people wouldn't watch league matches, but any FA Cup match, like TV viewership will go through the roof and they'd pack all the stadiums. And
FA Cups are more, it's more like a family thing. It's more like your local town team playing. You've got a big club playing in town. Maybe you're like a small team in England, like a small town, maybe a capacity of 2,000, and you've drawn.
It's still massive. Like the FA Cup's still massive to a smaller team. Like if you're say a Preston North End or something, and you're drawing a United in the FA Cup, you're buzzing. The whole fan base is buzzing. The whole town's buzzing.
But it's just with the high end of sport now in the top, especially in the Premier League, it's just not worth the financial clout. Isn't worth it. Like a European qualification spot is much more lucrative than playing in an FA and winning a cup final. It's not. It's not worth the same. So it's the league, the FA have to sort that out. It's up until them to restore the. I don't know what way you would have to do it or what incentives you could put on to get the FA Cup back to where it should be. But I could see where Pochettino was trying to prioritise, getting into a European spot and being consistent.
Well, the FA Cup you get into Europe, but what if you got into the Champions League? That would soon incentivise teams.
It would soon incentivise teams, but then that because there's all the separate governing bodies and all that sort of carry on, that then has to be passed through UEFA. So it's difficult. But I mean, you just with Pochettino on that there, you could see why that they were doing it, but he's still the man had probably one of Spurs' best eras in their entire history. I know that there was maybe a 1950s squad or whatever that was quite good. But I mean, he came out with, I know he got them to the Champions League final, and I know Spurs fans are, maybe they do see that as a big achievement from where they come from and all, and they maybe never thought that they'd see their side in that type of, cup final or whatever. But he did come out with absolutely nothing to show for.
He did, from 2014 to 2019, he was, he coached the team real well. They had them playing a great style of football. It brought in a great squad. For a few years there, their squad was, one of the top two in the league.
So consistent,
Yeah, just consistent. Finishing second in the league, finishing third in a league that they should have won. Poch actually became the fastest manager till 100, or the third fastest manager to 100 wins in English league history, which is crazy. And the fastest at Spurs, obviously. And as you were saying about losing the Champions League final to Liverpool, it's not like he hasn't had chances. Getting to the League Cup final. A second place finish in the league, a third place finish when they should have won the league that year. Leicester won, losing the Champions League final. But I don't know, just looking at it, the rest of that top six in the Premier League all won things, except for Spurs. And Spurs were arguably, in that time period, the second or third best team.
Yeah, probably. They were probably the most. They were probably one of the more consistent.
They finished in the top four every season. They were finishing second, third. When City were going through their rebuild, and before Liverpool had sort of built up, and it just, I don't know. I don't know how that Spurs team didn't win anything.
It was around that 2014 era, just coming into that start of the season where Kane was getting starts and Kane was bagging goals.
Yeah.
And after maybe after 3 or 4 months, you looked at Kane and you thought, they've actually a real deal here. They've actually a proper striker, and they've got Eriksen in behind them, and they had Ali,
Dele
Ali, and the great defenders as well.
Their back line was the best in the league. It just was.
Well, the thing was that they obviously took. They took them. I think it was obviously a decision made. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk around the not investing in the squad and investing in the stadium. So it looks like obviously they've taken a longer term approach till they decided to invest in the stadium for more sustainable, more sustainable and possibly more consistent success. Over the next number of years. Obviously, they built themselves a new stadium. It's probably one of the best in the world as far as football grounds.
Just modern, right in the pitch. Like, it's a great stadium.
They've doubled their attendance pretty much thereabouts. They've leased it out now to other sporting events like the NFL and stuff. So they've went and put, they sacrificed short-term and potential success with Mauricio Pochettino for more consistent going forward. But now, obviously, that was heavily based on being in the Champions League consistently there for a good 4 or 5 years.
Even then, that Spurs team was good enough. Like, it's not like, there wasn't enough money pumped into it, because that Spurs team was definitely good enough to win something.
Yeah.
Like, back to that point I've already made, that, we won 3 cups, Arsenal won 2 cups in the time period that Pochettino was there, and, that Spurs team, the entire time period, was better than us and better than Arsenal. Like,
yeah.
There was no point that I looked at United and said, we're a better team than Spurs in the last few years. You know what I mean? This season I do. But, that's not what we're looking at.
That was a very unique window Spurs had there for them.
They've never had 5 years in a row finishing in the top 4. It never happened in their history. Getting second place finishes for the first time from the 50s and things like that. There is just
you can put it down to absolutely brilliant team, and you can't take that away from them. But
a great manager too.
It was a strange phase as well, because United were in that strange phase where that Ferguson had gone, and they were trying to make a different change over to the different managers. Arsenal and Arsene Wenger and the players, there was that whole thing was sort of fading out a wee bit, and Chelsea were going through managers like they always do. Mourinho had them, then he lost his players, and
Conte, and Sarri, and Lampard,
and then we have
Liverpool had Brenny
Rodgers, and Jurgen was coming in around that 2015 time frame, and he had
a couple of years of building to do too.
He was sussing out and building. So Spurs had a very, very great chance there to actually, say
that season that Leicester won the league, it had to be Spurs' league title. It just had to be. What are Leicester doing going and winning the league title?
It's a bit mental,
And they lost out in second place in the final day and all the rest, but they already had lost by that point, and there was nothing really to play for. But how that Spurs team did not win the league that season, Leicester just come out of nowhere, understandably, and all the rest. But it was there to be won. I suppose it was theirs to lose.
It's that thing too,
every other team, as you were saying, was in rebuilding periods and were having poor seasons, and that's why Leicester ended up going to win the league, is because everyone else, it wasn't a good season for the top 6, except for Spurs. That was arguably Spurs' pomp. Their strongest period, the period that they should have won the league that year.
I don't think they'll ever get a better chance again.
I don't know if they will.
I mean, that was the thing too, going back to sort of one of your original points, Dave, with the carry on of not taking maybe a cup seriously. If you've maybe bred that sort of winning mentality, it's very hard to pin these sort of things down. But if you've maybe won a cup or something along those lines at that time, you'll maybe be more confident. You'll maybe not crack under pressure. You'll have, it's these things that happen. It's exactly what happened to Liverpool. They had the pressure on them from losing a couple of cup finals since Klopp joined, and then they lost the Champions League final. They came back the following year and won it. They had been there the year before and done it, and now that kicked them on into this year where they kept the momentum going. Momentum in sport's a massive thing too, and if you're not, consistently, I think Jose Mourinho said it. Jose Mourinho loved the League Cup because it was a chance to get your hands on a pot
early
in February, and that set you up for the run-in for the end of the season. And obviously, I know Mauricio probably was trying to
juggle things. I can understand his thinking about, he would rather be in the top 4. And, he'd rather be playing regular Champions League football and challenging for league titles. But if you ask any Tottenham Hotspurs fan, would they have taken the FA Cup in that play? Absolutely. They would have been loving it. Wembley would have been bouncing. Spurs fans going mental if they'd have won an FA Cup.
But, I mean, he was probably juggling multiple things. He would probably leave you in one ear saying, what we need from you is consistent top 4 finishes because we need to
get in the Champions League, get
money, finances here, sort of thing.
I suppose that whole stadium revamp and all was putting a bit of pressure on
was that what he called it too? It was that they didn't sign a player for 500 days or something too. That was an out.
That's right. They had that strange phrase. They didn't sign one player during.
And then it was Lucas Moura.
Yes, their squad was good, but build on a good squad. You don't just leave the squad there until it becomes not good. You build on it.
But that's all the finances and all that carry on too. It's difficult for them.
But the team I'm definitely choosing for a team that, should have won something and didn't, or, it's definitely that Pochettino Spurs team. Like, I know it's pretty recent and he's only obviously gone this season and things.
Mm-hmm.
But in that period, they had to win something. They didn't, but they had to.
The most consistent. They were probably the most consistent side
in that period.
Over that period.
Because City at times, probably City actually, but
City had that wee year or two where they had
City had the first year with Pep, and then had like the pre-Pep coming in thing too, and Pochettino was already in. So.
Even Pep's first year there, he was like.
I'd agree with that. Spurs probably were, and that from 2014 to 2019, the most consistent team in the league for that 5 years. Like, they just were like, and they were just consistent. Played great football, stylish football, had some great players, and just how they didn't win. They should have won the league, but even they should have won a League Cup, an FA Cup. Should have won something.
Aye.
Anything more than the Audi Cup.
They've nothing to show for it, unfortunately.
No, which is unfortunate because Mauricio Pochettino is a really good manager and he'll be really well thought of. For his time at Spurs, and maybe Spurs fan never thought that they would get to the Champions League final. They were always the good team, but never really got anywhere sort of thing. So difficult for them, but. He didn't come out with anything to show for.
A League Cup in 2008, I believe.
Aye, that's right.
Yeah.
So, fair enough. It's a good
show. Pochettino Spurs needed to win something, didn't.
Vesty.
Jose gladly, grind them down for a few years.
God knows. I was sort of thinking he might.
Just on the topic, I know it's it's not really historical or anything. It's more modern. But if any has heard, the rumours linking Kane to United.
Oh, I have, yes.
Perked up a wee bit.
They've perked up, because he supposedly doesn't like Mourinho and he wants to leave Spurs and he wants to go and win battles and he named United.
Oh, he's at the wheel.
Good luck with it.
Hi, we've just been over that we've won 3 trophies and Pochettino didn't win any.
Louis van Gaal's red and white army.
If he came to us in 2014, he'd be 3 trophies better off.
You needed something to turn to have 3 or 4 wins in the bounce. Stuff Liverpool haven't had in a while.
Aye.
Jesus. Right.
That's that.
Good Bournemouth hammering coming tomorrow. This podcast will go up after that, so whatever Liverpool will inevitably hammer Bournemouth, they can, come back and mock us.
Edit that out, Dave, if that does happen, right?
Absolutely not. Leaving that in. Knock Atletico out of the cup and move on.
Wishful thinking.
Leslie, which team have you chosen?
Well, Christopher, I have decided to go international, and I have went for the England Golden Generation team.
Yeah, I was always
wondering. That team didn't win anything either. My God.
So for anybody that is slightly not familiar with what that means,
a younger fan possibly.
A younger fan who's maybe not too familiar with what the Golden Generation is, it's basically around the period from 2004 to 2014. Probably, I would even say some of it's coming from the 2002. Now I'm going by World Cups and Euro tournaments.
Yeah.
Like, because the 2002 World Cup was my first proper memory of actually committing to a World Cup.
Yeah.
From what I can remind off the top of my head.
I remember a good portion of World Cup '98.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I remember getting the game, and I remember watching games in the house and stuff, bits and pieces. But I wouldn't have watched. I was 7 or something, so I wouldn't have been too much invested. But I remember the big games, and I remember sitting down to watch the final, and I remember a couple of other wee games. I remember was it England, maybe a quarter or something, I think, as well, that they ended up playing in. I remember Owen as well, that sort of carry on. But
I remember the
2002 would have been the first World Cup us boys would have
committed to.
Had a brilliant, Ireland's World Cup.
We were there, and for anyone listening that's not from Ireland, we used to get pulled out of school when the Ireland games were on and got to sit and watch the Ireland games.
Primary school class high five.
It was great. I remember we got to watch the Ireland game in our school, and we had the TV on the back and everybody was sitting around and watching it.
And because it was on really early in the morning, that World Cup, it was in Korea and Japan.
It was Saudi Arabia, I think we played, and it was a 3-0 victory. Gary Breen scored one of the goals.
Gary Breen.
So basically,
England's Golden Generation.
England's Golden Generation. I mean, we're going to start off here by looking at the Euro 2004 squad. England have always had and still do have a very much on the fence quality goalkeeper.
Yeah.
As much as you can say about the Golden Generation,
the last good goalkeeper is Dave Seaman.
Dave Seaman was the last good goalkeeper, and unfortunately,
he had a good World Cup in 2002.
Unfortunately, that Ronaldinho goal will always be remembered for the wrong reasons for David Seaman.
That, it's not like they're terrible goalkeepers. David James is a good goalkeeper.
Calamity.
to be fair to James, he was a bit of a hallion at times and doing crazy things, but some days he was unbeatable.
No,
some days he was
these are good goalkeepers. They're not world class goalkeepers, but they're good goalkeepers. Like
they're good keepers.
Even our Paul Robinson thrown in there for good crack.
We'll just go through this list of the 2004 squad, and we'll highlight the players that are considered the golden generation. But let's just take a typical
from 1 to 11. This squad was absolutely ridiculous.
A starting 11, like arguably, was the best squad in the world at that time. Like,
so you're starting. We've got David James in nets. At right back, we've got Gary Neville.
Yep.
At left back, we have Ashley Cole. Centre half is John Terry, Sol Campbell. Now, Rio wasn't in this squad. I don't know if that was due to the...
I think that was a suspension.
The Leeds suspension.
But even aside from Rio not...
drugs test.
Even aside from Rio not being there, I mean, Ledley King was on the bench.
Yeah.
And Carragher's a player that you want in your squad for doing the dirty work, if he has to come on, that's a great defence to have there. In the midfield, you've Beckham, you've Gerrard, you've Scholes, you've Lampard, you've Butt, you've Hargreaves, you've Joe Cole, you've Kieran Dyer. Such a good midfield. Like, Kieran Dyer was actually a great player in his younger day. He was blighted with injuries. That's why he fizzled out.
Ridiculous.
Like. That's what it is. Like, you look at any midfield with Scholes, Giggs, Lampard, Gerrard, Beckham. I mean, they're Giggs.
Well, I suppose you're going to get into it, but there was issues with the quality.
Yes. And then up top,
whoever decided to stick Scholes in the left wing needs taken out and shot.
And
Gerrard in the left wing.
Irish guys do not support Dev sort of shooting people. Up top, you have Rooney, who was his first tournament. He was only still a teenager. And beside,
what a teenager he was.
Beside Michael Owen, and this was pretty much the year that earned Michael Owen his move to Madrid.
Yeah.
So, a great squad, and on the bench you've got Big Heskey. Can't forget about Big Heskey.
DJ Emile.
It's such a good squad. Like, this is pretty much, and I guess if we're talking about the golden generation, the players that we'd highlight here would be, Gerrard, Lampard,
Scholes,
Beckham,
the entire
Rooney,
bloody squad.
The entire squad.
Like, if you think about that, that's a squad with 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 world class players in it.
Oh yeah.
In that squad, like proper players that would walk into any team in the world. Like, Beckham, well, he obviously wanted to do it, but like Gerrard would have walked into any team in the world. Lampard would have walked into any team in the world. Scholes would have walked into any team in the world. John Terry would have walked into any team in the world. Rooney, Owen would have walked into any team in the world.
Yep.
No doubt. Like,
it was such a good squad, and that tournament ended.
Ashley Cole.
Ashley Cole was there. I mean, that tournament ended with England going out in the quarterfinals to Portugal.
Brazil.
Oh no, this is the Euros, rather.
Oh, sorry,
the
sorry.
Euros.
The wink.
Well, you're on about 04 here.
Sorry. All right.
The wink.
This is 2004. They went into the quarterfinals against Portugal and they drew 2-2. Portugal beat them 6-5 in penalties. Now, to get to Dev's point, we'll move on, because in 2006, the World Cup, they went out on the quarters to Portugal again. It was 0-0. And
what was the 2006 I was thinking of?
It was a 3-1 defeat in penalties. And going to what Dev just brought up there, I think that was the game where there was the Ronaldo and Rooney exchange, where there was
Ronaldo got him stand off and then winked him.
Apparently Fergie had a bit of peacekeeping to do when they came back from international duty.
But then they ended up going on to win a treble that year. Or was it the year after? No.
It would have been
that year.
It would have been commencing. United won it 2006-07 and then 7-08 and 08-09, 3 back-to-backs. So Fergie bandaged that up pretty nicely.
He did alright.
Again, that squad was still pretty much all there. Obviously this time you had Ferdinand back.
Which just made it better.
Yeah, it just made it better pretty much. Obviously some players like Stuart Downing were coming through the team, and Aaron Lennon was breaking through, and you had Jermaine Genius there. Theo Walcott, that was the year Walcott went up. He was like literally a kid.
He was literally a teenager and didn't play a single minute. Was photo like guy.
So again, it ended in turmoil for them. They didn't. They again met Portugal and they went out at the quarters, which brings us on to 2008. And this is quite a... I remember this so well. Because England didn't qualify for the Euros in 2008. They went out at Wembley at a 3-2 defeat to a Slaven Bilic, Croatia team.
Uh-huh.
Scott Carson made a huge error
Uh-huh.
and let one of the goals in. It wasn't it the game that it was entitled the Wally with the Brawley.
Mm-hmm.
Here's something I thought
Steve
of there
McLaren.
now, just to jump in. Do you think a 4-3-3 was a more popular formation back then, and they actually played a 4-3-3 and put them three in the midfield together rather than trying to shoehorn someone out in the wing? Do you think that team could have?
Well, I know that 4-3-3 wasn't a big thing in the Premier League for quite some time, but it was brought in around 2004 by Jose Mourinho. Jose Mourinho came in with the 4-3-3 pretty swift. He came in and had Duff and
Robin.
Iron Robin on the wings, and he sort of implemented the 4-3-3. Apparently, that's when Fergie decided to change. Fergie, like Mourinho, came in and took the league by storm pretty much in them first few seasons.
Years in a row,
and that was when Fergie transitioned from the 4-4-2 to the 4-3-3 because of what Mourinho was doing. And then that's when he's obviously moved on to, obviously, as you said, when you're traveling of league titles. But that was around the same time as that there, but that was because of Jose Mourinho. But you went like wasn't it like Tevez, Rooney, Ronaldo, or whatever?
But if the England team would have actually been able to put Scholes in the pivot with Gerrard and Lampard in front of him, rather than sticking Scholes out in the left wing or benching him completely,
and even to say off that, like say if you were playing somebody. Like obviously they went out to Portugal and stuff there. If you were playing a team that was better than that, like that you would perceive as being better than you,
sticking Owen Hargreaves in,
maybe 4 Scholes, and then you have an out and out holding midfielder along with Gerrard doing the box to box role and Lampard getting forward.
Yeah.
That was a thing because I think, memory serves correct, I think 04 was Scholes' last year with the England at a tournament. Scholes retired before he was 30 at international level.
I was just fed up with him stuck on the bench or out in the left wing.
I don't know if that was because what you say there, which may have well been the case, or whether he felt that he wanted to commit to United more, and he felt that that golden generation of Lampard and Gerrard was what it needed to go forward, and let them two basically be that heart of the midfield.
They just couldn't play together either.
But there was around this time too. There was a lot of controversy around the England squads at this time because it sort of tailed off a wee bit in more recent years, but at this time there was an awful amount of media pressure on the England side because they knew how good they were. They knew how good they were. There was even
in the last international tournament there, after England going so far and all, but the pressure was off them because the media, no one was expecting England to go far.
But it was because of recent events.
But because of obviously the golden generation's failings. But I know what you mean because the pressure that England were expected to win every tournament.
Yeah.
And of course they were. That team was the best international team in the world.
There was so much controversy around them. There was is this the right? I remember the Sven-Goran Eriksson stuff. Is this the right guy? Is this the right manager that's going to get us to where we need to be? Are they adaptable enough? Why is he putting, as you said, there were Scholes was on the left wing at times. Gerrard was being played out of position. There wasn't a manager at the time strong enough to take on these individuals and have the balls basically to say it was I reckon that Gerrard's the best midfielder of his generation in my opinion. But if you didn't think in your system Steven Gerrard should have played, there was nobody there to have the balls to say, look, you can't start in the midfield that I want to play.
I think different because I think the managers tried too hard to fit players into their system rather than fitting the system for the players. You know what I mean?
Right.
Forcing people to play out of position.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean.
And putting forcing them to play out of position because when you could just play with 3 in midfield.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you
could
just change the formation around the players that you have.
Or if play with a left winger if that's what you need to do. If you need to play with a left winger, just you have the balls to say, right, Scholesy, you're not starting. I can't start you. I need Lampard, I need Gerrard, I need Hargreaves this game. You're not. But nobody at this time had the nuts on them to sort of lay down in what way they're going to do it, and have the balls to, because you were going to drop somebody. Somebody was going to have to be dropped, and there was nobody at that time confident enough to sort of just go, well, this is what we're doing, and this is the way we're going to do it going forward, and it held them back.
Yeah,
the pressure that's been on them has been unreal, and I think that's why later in the last few years they've got on a bit better in tournaments because they haven't put as much pressure on them.
It's just when you look at that team compared to the golden generation, the current crop, it's a good team, but it's not the golden generation.
No, it's not. No,
it's not near it. So that sort of takes us on into the, obviously after not qualifying for 08, there was a lot of an uproar in McLaren and walked away, and that's when Fabio Capello he came in. In 2010 they reached the last 16. It's crazy that this is going up 10 years, almost 10 years ago now, but I remember watching this game and they went out to Germany 4-1.
Yeah.
And you remember whenever like Muller was running riot, like that was Muller's breakout World Cup.
Yeah.
You know, Thomas Muller.
We're talking about this beforehand. I'm reading Rafa Honigstein's book, The Das Reboot, by Rafa Honigstein, and it's like how Germany rebuilt themselves. And at this point, like Germany had invested in systems and players and youth and coaches all over the place, youth academies for every club that was compulsory, and all this stuff all over. So all these players were coming up playing together. That's maybe worth saying at this point too. There's been sort of talks about it now that some of the England players afterwards said that like club loyalties and stuff kind of got in the way with England too now as well.
You can understand that too with the England team because it's very unique compared to a lot of other countries. Like if you look at the Spanish national team, they're scattered over Germany, England, Spain, Italy, France. But you look at the English national team, it's England. They all just play in England apart from Jadon Sancho. Barry Hargreaves when he was at
Bayern, they do tend to stay.
Because if you're, half of your Spanish national team will be in the Prem and the Bundesliga and Italy and
because obviously at this point in time too, like English teams were doing quite well in Europe and all too. Liverpool obviously had their Champions League success. They had reached another Champions League final. United were in their absolute pomp too. Chelsea came onto the scene. A lot of these players were playing against each other, so rivalry was a big thing, and then having to integrate that into a winning system for an international outfit's difficult. Like I think Ferdinand's talked about it and things like that there. I think even maybe Neville said stuff like that too. Like the team would have been divided,
they would have been very cliquey and all the they wouldn't all get on together, Your United men would have been hanging around with your United men, your Chelsea men with your Chelsea men, your Liverpool men with your Liverpool men.
I seen a thing, Neville, Gary Neville and Stevie Gerrard were sitting down watching it was like Neville's show on Sky. They were watching like
Soccer Box or something,
and they were watching Gerrard's highlights or whatever, and Neville was saying, "Do you remember that time when we were away in England duty years ago, and I come into the room, your hotel room, and I says to you, because like I think he actually says, because some of us would mingle a bit, but some people would stick to their own people, like from clubs, and he says, do you remember when I come into the hotel room, and I says, would you never consider coming to United, like?" And like Gerrard says, whenever you left the room, he says, "I didn't know what you meant. Like, were you being serious? Were you actually just winding me up?" But that just sort of goes to show that there was always that bit of suspicion a wee bit. It's maybe had
Alex Ferguson hated Liverpool, and like I as I say, I think Steven Gerrard's a generational footballer, and I think he's better, in my opinion, he's better than Scholes and Lampard. But at that time,
he would say that, wouldn't he?
Well, you can. There's a whole side of the game that Paul Scholes wasn't good at, and Gerrard was, so I'll just put that out there.
Hey, what's he saying?
I mean, like, Paul Scholes.
I'm going to give Xavi and Iniesta a phone up here and see what they think about what you have to say to him.
I can phone Zinedine Zidane, I can phone Jose Mourinho and anybody else too about fucking Stevie G as well. But
Jose Mourinho will be straight on to Lampard's.
Here, Jose tried to sign him, but but it was very cliquey and all at the same time too, and But go back to, it was 2010 you're at?
I mean, that was the World Cup. They went out 4-1 in the last 16 to Germany.
The South African World Cup.
The South African World Cup. I mean, basically that squad was still very good. I mean, they had Rooney. They had like other players, younger players coming through as well that weren't putting the golden generation players out of the team, but they were great players to have as a back, like Michael Carrick.
This was their kind of last hurrah, like, wasn't it? Though the 2010.
Because there isn't like I don't like Ferdinand wasn't in that squad. Rio Ferdinand, he wasn't in that squad.
Yeah, that England squad would have been a lot better if they'd started with Mickey Carrick. Just saying.
Michael Carrick was on the bench for that game against Germany. They went with Lampard, Gerrard, Gareth Barry, and James Milner. And then they had Rooney and Defoe up top with Upson, John Terry, Cole, and Glenn Johnson at defence with David James in goals, and they lost 4-1. And
that was a Lampard over the line goal.
That was a Lampard over the line goal, which clearly did go over the line, but obviously they didn't have goal line technology, or the officials didn't pick up on it. So I don't know. I can't remember the score at the time. I don't know if it was 2-1 or if it was 3-1.
I think it might have been 2-1 or something. They were in the game still.
And then obviously. Actually, I think that goal led to as soon as I could hit the crossbar and bounced over the line and came out again, it wasn't given. I think Germany actually went down the other end and scored shortly after. So huge controversy, and again they went out. Goes on to the 2012
A lot of guys are getting older now. Like.
Euros. They're getting older. I mean, like.
They're all like a lot of your golden generation are in their maybe 30s now.
It's kind of like a sad story here in a way, because like 2012 they lost in the quarterfinals to Italy in a 0-0 game, and obviously England loved losing penalties, so they lost.
What do you hear, my team?
Go
on ahead.
They lost 4-2 in penalties, but they actually didn't play too badly in the group games. You know, they were in a group with Ukraine, who were the joint holders, and they actually topped France in goal difference. I think they drew with France in the first game or whatever. But this is, I guess this is kind of like the ultimate kick in the teeth, if you like, because obviously this sort of leads to where I'm finishing up, because it's like a 10-year period. You know, 2004 was kind of like the introduction of the golden generation as a whole. And this was Roy Hodgson's World Cup team. So I'll just read out the team they had. They had Joe Hart in nets, Leighton Baines, Gary Cahill, Phil Jagielka, Glenn Johnson, Phil Jones.
A lot of the guys were out of the squad now.
A lot of guys were out of the squad. I mean, they had Ross Barkley, Gerrard, who was still around. This was his last hurrah. Hendo from Liverpool, Adam Lallana, Lampard, his last hurrah. A very established and reliable James Milner. Young Oxlade-Chamberlain, Raheem Sterling, and
that's a completely different squad now. Like,
and just turned over.
And pretty much a fella who was very much regarded as a next sort of unique sort of like player for England would be Jack Wilshere, but he had glass ankles and that never worked out.
Yeah.
And obviously they had they had Rooney and Danny Sturridge up top with Danny Welbeck, but they also had a Ricky Lambert.
That was good for us too.
But this is kind of like I mean, if you're talking about golden generation, yes, there's a lot of them players that aren't there. I mean, you've no Terry, you've no Ferdinand, you've no Beckham, Scholes, you've no
Owen.
No Michael Owen as such. But you always sort of, when you think of the golden generation, Lampard and Gerrard do come out as the two. You sort of nearly think of the first two, like. And this was their last.
Someone says golden generation to me, I automatically go to Beckham. Like.
I think Beckham, Gerrard, that like Beckham qualifying them in the World Cup that time.
That goal against Greece was unbelievable.
At Old Trafford too.
Yeah, him, Gerrard, Scholes. When I think of the golden generation of England, I just literally think about the midfield issues.
I literally just look at that midfield and think, how did that not win
that? World Cups are hard to win. It's hard to turn around and say international teams only get together, and like the life cycle of any given international team. Again, I'm reading this book at the minute. They kind of target like 4 to 6 years, obviously. So that's kind of the thing. So it's kind of hard, you're only getting together and a lot of the games don't matter and you breeze through qualifying and stuff and it all comes down to every couple of years you have to do something.
Might help with that, with a lot of the games not mattering and things.
Maybe a bit
that. Decent opposition.
But I mean, at the same time...
against Gibraltar.
But I mean, at the same time, you kind of have to... It's hard, it is hard, but I mean... Not even a Euros, there wasn't a final appearance there or anything, so
not even a semi-final appearance.
That's what I mean there. Like, I mean the furthest I've gotten in periods of the tournaments I've listed is the quarters, but this is the biggest kick in the teeth. I think that 2002 World Cup and the three group games they had Uruguay, they lost 2-1. Luis Suarez scored 2 goals.
Yeah.
They had Italy as well. They lost 2-1 Italy. They drew with Costa Rica. They didn't make it out of the group stage.
Aye.
Like that's just an ultimate kick in the stones right there. Like.
A lot of the golden generation there's gone, and then it's whoever's left, last chance saloon sort of thing. And
like it was Rooney sort of
like the team's better now than it was in that 2012 team, but during the golden generation, it doesn't have
that sort of like 2002 till about 2008 ish roughly was kind of just like there was players all over the pitch there, like you had everybody in your prime.
Like the back line was world class, every single one of them. Guy Neville world class, Ashley Young world class, Ferdinand world class, Terry world class.
Ashley Cole.
But
no, you know what?
The whole midfield, everyone was world class.
Ashley Cole.
That was a world class bar goalkeeper. Like the 10 outfield players would have walked in any team.
I just think about 2002 to about 2008, there was a nice blend of young and old. Gerrard was in his prime. Lampard probably in his prime, Terry in his prime, Scholes maybe a wee touch older, but again, not overly old that he couldn't contribute or anything like that. There, a Rio Ferdinand in his prime. Ashley Cole had just went invincible. Beckham as a Galactico. Ashley Cole had went invincible and then moved to Chelsea and won trophies there.
Oh, they were balling out everywhere. Like the talent they had was and I think in hindsight, you look back, you sort of actually look at it and think, flip me, that actually was a brilliant team. Because at the time, I think we're all guilty of this one. You always sort of watch.
We're Irish. We do not support England too much.
You always get a wee bit of enjoyment out of watching England stuff, But like now you look back.
We've just killed anybody that's listened to us from England. But go ahead.
It's like you look at them now and you think, that was a great team, and like, how did they not do better?
How did they not make a final?
Or even a semi-final?
It's really bad how it went for them. But some great players, and like it deserves an honourable mention, as in that golden generation. How they. I'm not saying they had to or they should have won a tournament. They definitely had the talent to do so.
Or at least get closer to win the tournament.
But the fact they didn't get close at any stage, it's pretty bad.
There was a lot of media pressure and all too, and management issues and stuff, but I didn't get close.
Didn't get close, and as you say, I think a lot of it is due to the media that just piled on unnecessary pressure. But that leaves us to last and least.
I'll let you go first next time.
Oh, cheers, lads. So I went international also. A team that was maybe slightly gets forgotten about now about how good they were. I think I've covered a 4-year period. I went a wee bit longer for another wee thing, but I went for a 4-year period of this team. Again, I'm going to read out some names of some players here, and a squad that went to a World Cup. I went international as well, and a squad that went to a World Cup. And when I read out some of these names, you're going to be like, what the hell, So I wanted to cover the Dutch team from 1996 to 2000.
Okay.
An absolutely ridiculous squad, and again had some horrendous luck at the international tournaments. So Holland 1986 to 2000. So as you'll probably recall, fellas, I know that we wouldn't have. Well, we're young enough to know that this happened, but we wouldn't have recalled it.
No.
But you'll remember that in 1985, Ajax won the Champions League.
Aye.
They did.
So Ajax won the Champions League with a team primarily based with Dutch players. We've talked about this in a podcast that hasn't went out yet, but this is, players stayed in their country for a wee bit still. It was the sort of, I think even in Italy at the time, you're only allowed like 3 international players in your squad and stuff. You still had there was quite a strict rule and stuff. So this Ajax team won the Champions League, an absolutely phenomenal team. And you would think that would then lend itself, players are playing together. Sort of when you think about it, like the Barca kind of 08 to 12, where they kind of dominated with Spain.
Dominated too.
Sort of this
squad was,
so a link to that for younger listeners. If you remember Spain, if you aren't that young, Spain in 08 went and won Euros in 08, a World Cup in 2010, and then a Euros again in 2012, mainly because
Nando Torres.
Yeah.
That team was stupidly good.
It was better. What?
He was better for Spain, 100%.
He was better for.
No.
Yeah.
Leighton Firestave, I like it.
But no. So just to give you a reference, this is what Holland could have done. So they won the Champions League, beating AC Milan in the final 1-0, a brilliant AC Milan side as well. And you would think that would then lead into a development and a transition to the international squad. 8 of the players in Ajax's final squad played for the international team. So I'll name you some absolutely phenomenal players here. At the time when they won the Champions League, Edwin van der Sar was 25. They had Michael Reisiger at right back, 23. They had Danny Blind, Daly's old boy, 34, so he's a bit older. Rijkaard was older as well.
And a star.
But yeah, had retired from international football at the stage. Like Rijkaard had obviously had a success in 1988 with the Dutch squad that won a European Championship. But the De Boer twins, Frank and Ronald De Boer, a young Clarence Seedorf at 20.
Big Clarence, McGay.
Edgar Davids at 23. Mark Overmars and Patrick Kluivert.
Kluivert.
A very young Patrick Kluivert.
There's another fella here. There's another fella here.
But they went on. Who?
Tom's mate.
Dennis. Oh well, Dennis wasn't in. Dennis didn't play for Ajax.
Oh, sorry, you're on about
Yes, I am on
but
the
he
Ajax squad.
he was on that.
Aye.
He was on that. In the
So
squad, aye.
Euro 96 rolls round. They're managed by Gus Hiddink, and the tournament's played in England. So a good portion, obviously, of the above squad, I think it was 8 players, ended up playing for the international side, and it was there were some notable additions. Dennis Bergkamp, Jaap Stam,
Big Jaap Stam was unreal.
What a
Philippe
man.
Cocu, and
Cocu.
Jordi Cruyff as well. Remember El Jordi?
Aye.
You know, Jordi was hot, like, you know, for a time. Everybody thought he was going to be his dad, but
It wasn't.
no,
Spoiler alert.
He played for United for a wee while, didn't he?
he did.
Aye. I mind that.
So they get drawn in Group A along with England, Scotland, and Switzerland. They drew 0-0 with Scotland. They beat Switzerland 2-0. Jordi Cruyff and Mr. Bergkamp got on the score sheet. And then
I love Dennis Bergkamp.
and then they lost to England 4-1. They got a bit of a trouncing by England. Cliver got in the score sheet, but Sheringham and Shearer had a brace. This was England's tournament to win one as well. To be fair, like, this was playing at home. It's coming home 30 years since it won a World Cup, and then it was hosted in England this year, European competition.
That squad was also silly good too. Like
Yeah.
Shearer, Gaza, sorry, but it's so good. It was so good.
So they got a bit of a trouncing by England, and then they went on, obviously, straight into the quarters in the European Championships, and they came up against a France side, an up-and-coming France side that was quite strong as well. This is obviously, we know that France went on to win the World Cup 2 years following.
Yeah.
So an up-and-coming France side, and they drew 0-0, and they lost in penalties 5-4, and unfortunately it was Clarence Seedorf was the man that missed.
Yeah.
So they got knocked out, but obviously, you know, this was quite a young team. It was a nice blend, but there was, you know, this infusion of young Ajax players, and you were thinking,
new generation coming through. You
know,
could tell a bit of talent.
they were 23, 20, 23, 25, 24, 26. You know, you were like, right, well, they've established themselves as an international competitor. There'll be a World Cup in 2 years. We'll see how they do, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, we rolled around till World Cup '98. It's in France. They're still managed by Gus Hiddink, another great, you know, a good manager for his time.
Mm-hmm.
And this was one of the ones. This was like their tournament. You know, there was a few big. Obviously, France were favoured at being at home. The Brazilian team was heavily favoured after winning the World Cup in 1984. Obviously, Argentina were quite well favoured, and this was Holland's. Like, right, okay, this is going to be the tournament. Holland have a real stab at it. Like, you know, they were well favoured.
Mm.
I'm going to read you some of the squad list here, fellas, because it's absolutely ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So you have Edwin van der Sar, who was 27, Michael Reisiger, 25, Jaap Stam, 25, Edgar Davids, 25, Pierre van Hooijdonk, 28, Frank de Boer, 28, Ronald de Boer, 28, Bergkamp, 29, Overmars, 25, Giovanni van Bronckhorst, 23 years of age, Patrick Kluivert, 21, Clarence Seedorf, 22, Philippe Cocu, 27, Bolo Zenton, 21, and Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank at 26.
I heard Bodo's ending getting the old nod.
That is 15 players out of a 22 or 3-man squad, and every one of them is an absolute baller. Like,
yeah,
and
That's outrageous.
It's a really nice blend of like old and young. There, you have the De Boer brothers, you know, 28 years of age. You have a nice wee mixed. Edwin van der Sar is 27, Davids is 25.
Maybe a bit of Juventus at that point, wouldn't he have?
Edwin, I think so, lad. You might be right.
I think he moved to Fulham in 2001.
Aye.
He moved to Fulham after Juventus signed his replacement.
But you have a nice
Right,
blend. You have a nice blend there. There's some nice like young players. There's you know, a nice mix of experience too. So you're thinking like, right, this is gonna be, you know, Bergkamp's 29. You know, he's gonna be leading the line for you. You have a nice blend. You have you know, the Spain of your team's really good with the De Boer twins and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Bergkamp up front, Edwin van der Sar in net. You have a really good side here, like, and a really nice blend of young and old. So they were in Group E along with Belgium, Mexico, and South Korea, which is a tidy enough wee group. That'll be a nice wee group to, you know, watch.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
they ended up topping the group with 5 points, along with Mexico jointing 5 points. They drew 0-0 with Belgium. They slapped Korea 5-0. Cocu, Overmars, Bergkamp, Van Hooijdonk, and Ronald de Boer all got in the score sheet. And then they drew 2-2 with Mexico. So that wasn't so bad. So they topped the group anyway. And they went into the round of 16 against the former Yugoslavian state.
I honestly, now I'm thinking of that team, I don't think Holland have been as good a team since.
And
they won more since?
Yeah, no, they haven't won anything.
Oh, they got to the final, sorry.
Yeah,
in terms of an even spread, because even if you look at that, say that
you
squad,
can nearly make an argument for that squad there in the 98 World Cup final being better than the 1988 Euro team that won the European Cup.
Aye.
Did I could be wrong on this?
That was Van Basten and
Aye.
Hullet and all,
Did something that happened in the 1982 Euros? Was it Holland that was bumped out?
I'm not sure of that,
So,
actually.
no, do you remember the 92 Euros? Denmark won it because they get in. Somebody was bumped out because they breached rules or regulations. There was a team kicked out that qualified for Euro 92.
Right.
Denmark got in the place of them, and Denmark won it. I don't think it was the Dutch, but for some reason there, I thought it was maybe the
No,
Dutch.
maybe, I'm not too sure.
I don't think it was, but I
started my research in 1995, Vesti.
In terms of saying that there could be the greatest Dutch team ever, potentially yes, because even in that period where we had there, even up to 10 years ago, you had the Robins and the Snyders and the
But you only had
Van
3 or
Persies.
4 good players, proper good players.
Yeah, you didn't have a spread of quality across.
And then you had a few other players in there that are that are decent. Your De Jongs and your
Aye.
I named 15 players there,
Big Nades.
and every one of them,
Big Nazy would, aye.
they're all class like that 15.
In fairness, well, let's not take too much away from that Dutch team. In 2010,
I think
they went to Spain in the final, and lost to Spain, didn't they?
Yeah.
Aye, because
Kicked the absolute hell out of them.
wasn't it
The
Mark
dirtiest team I've ever seen.
Mark Van Bommel booting me?
Oh, aye, Big Nades De Jong, absolutely.
Oh, aye.
But aye, so they went on to the quarterfinals of the World Cup in 1998, and they beat Argentina 2-1. So they took a big scalp there. We've talked about this in the podcast we did recently. This was the Patrick Kluivert scored, and then this was the Bergkamp goal. The long ball up, the 2-3 touches into the net from about 60 yards. Remember, the ball was played diagonally from sort of the left back area, straight forward. Bergkamp takes it out of there, kills it, drops it inside a man.
Oh,
And
aye.
that was scored in the 89th minute.
Much prefers Newcastle goal, but
This is
that's
the
personal
second
preference.
best goal, to be fair. But yeah, so they go through. That was scored in the 89th minute, so it was a game winner, and they knocked out the Argentines, so a big scalp. They move on to the semis, and they run into Brazil. Ronaldo gets in the score sheet, and then Kluivert gets an 87th minute equaliser, and they end up going to penalties. So they got knocked out in penalties in the 1986 Euros, and they got knocked out again in penalties. Ronaldo, Rivaldo, Emerson, and Dunga all scored. Frank de Boer, Dennis Bergkamp scored, and then Kaku missed and Ronald de Boer missed, so they were knocked out. So they got to the semi-final and lost out in penalties again. So 2 tournaments in a row they get bounced in pens. So then we move on till Euro 2000, and it's held in Belgium and Holland. So it's at home for them, really. They're managed now by Frank Rijkaard, obviously an iconic, the captain and stuff of the he was the captain, I think, of the 1988 squad.
Could be.
And obviously, pretty legendary. He's obviously played with some of these fellas too, because he had retired from international football in 1984. But he had played with these guys. He'd won the Champions League with some of these players.
Aye, yeah.
So yeah. So this is the last chance, really, for a portion of this squad, going into the 2000 Euros.
Was Ruud Hull part of that 96 or 98 team?
No.
He wasn't.
Who am I talking? I know.
There's there's Rijkaard, but Ruud Hull was Dutch, wasn't he?
Ruud Hull was earlier in that, was he not?
Aye, he'd have been earlier.
He'd have been
He'd
a bit
been
earlier,
I think.
Aye, okay, fair enough.
But no. So this is the kind of last chance for a portion of the squad. The De Boer twins were 30 now. Bergkamp was 31. Kaku was 29. Jaap Stam was 27. But I think Jaap had started getting a few injuries, and then this is why Fergie moved him on.
Aye, Fergie moved him on.
So,
said it was the biggest mistake he ever made.
Yeah.
It was the only regret he has or something.
Something like that.
Something along those lines.
Reisiger was 27, Overmars was 27, and Davids was 27. Now, it's not to say that these men couldn't have played in another tournament, but now they're in a later part of their career, so they're maybe in and around their 30s into the next. Obviously, there'll be a few guys coming through, Seedorf and Kluivert and stuff, but this will be sort of the last big chance for this team as a unit to win something.
Yeah.
And it's at home. So they get drawn in Group D in a really tasty little group. Holland, France, the Czech Republic, and Denmark. So a real tasty wee group there.
Per Denmark.
Per Denmark. And they topped the group. They won all 3 games. They beat the Czechs 1-0, a Frank de Boer goal.
And for anyone younger viewers listening, this isn't modern day Czech, but this was a great Czech team.
Yeah.
This was a team full of Nedveds.
Yeah.
Thomas Rosickis and the like.
A good side. So they beat Denmark 3-0. Kluivert, Ronald de Boer, and Bolo Zetten got in the score sheet. And then they beat the world champs, the defending world champs, 3-2. They beat France. Christophe Dugarry, Trezeguet with a goal, and then Kluivert Frank de Boer and Bolo Zenton again got in the score sheet, so they beat the defending world champions 3-2 in the group and topped it with 9 points. France obviously went through as well with 6.
Mm-hmm.
They go into the quarterfinals against the former Yugoslavia again, and they tanked them 6-1. So Kluivert got a hat-trick, Overmars got a brace, and there was an own goal. So they're rolling here, like they're maybe thinking, right, here we go, we can maybe, do something.
Mm-hmm.
They've topped the group, they've beat France, it's going pretty well for them. And then they get to the semi-finals and they run into Italy. And Italy do what Italy do and draw 0-0.
Yeah.
Cause them all sorts of problems. And beat them 3-1 in pens.
3-1. That's his day.
Kluivert was the only man to score. Stam missed, Frank de Boer missed, and another fella missed. So they got knocked out in 3 successive tournaments on penalties. Italy, like. Italy, they drew 0-0, knocked them out in penalties. So, 3 successive tournaments for a golden generation of Dutch players, and they get knocked out in penalties in every single one in successive tournaments, which is ridiculous. A great squad, and it was the last chance for some of them fellas.
That's kind of like the last tournament was the last chance for a lot of Belgium's golden generation.
Yeah.
Like that Belgium squad was in a similar situation.
Same thing, that, obviously there was a lot of fellas on the road out. The De Boers and things like that, or Dennis Bergkamp as well, Kaku and all. By the time the next tournament rolled around in 2002, these fellas would have been at the real back end of their career.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some. I'll go into what happened. In 2002, there were still some of the young core that came up with some of the senior players in this squad. Bolo Zenton was 25, Patrick Kluivert was 25, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst was 27, Seedorf was 26, Davids was 29, Overmars was 29, and Jaap Stam was 29. So, there were still some of them there.
Aye.
And you're thinking, right, well, this is definitely the last chance. Obviously, some of the other sort of golden generation of that had moved on or whatever, but there was still some of the core there. They didn't qualify outright for the tournament in 2002, and they went into a qualification group. And bonus points for who stopped them, lads. Yeah.
I'm going to guess this.
Yeah. Who stopped them, Vesti?
The Republic
Of Ireland.
of Ireland.
Yeah.
And I'm even going to guess, could be wrong on this, they went on a 2-legged fixture.
Yeah.
And they went to Holland, and was it 0-0?
Something like that, lad,
And they went to Lansdowne Road, and was it not Jason McAtee that scored in the 1-0
I was
win?
going to ask you that. I was going to ask you.
I'll get my coat, ladies and gentlemen. I'll get my coat, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you all tomorrow.
For a bonus point, I was going to ask you who was the goal scorer. So the very last chance that a lot of these fellas had to maybe salvage something, they come
And they
against.
kindly stepped aside and gave us young Irish men and women a chance to watch our team on the glorious stage.
We haven't
Thank
been
you, Holland.
We haven't been as good since.
And then, it's...
And we weren't too good before, but we knocked out Holland. Jason McAteer scored a goal at Lansdowne Road. It was a cross by young Steve Finnan.
Silly
And, what do you call it? So the last chance for that sort of golden generation of Holland players fizzled out with them not even qualifying for the World Cup. So obviously you said, with England being knocked out in the group and stuff, they didn't even make the World Cup. Obviously the sort of maybe like the spine with the De Boers and stuff, and Bergkamp fizzling out of the squad, you just pull a spine out of a squad, and even though there were still some talented players still maybe in their primes,
it's still
they couldn't replace some of them, like the De Boers and stuff like that there, Bergkamp as well. And their last chance really, some of these guys were 29, and by the time the following tournament rolled around, they would have been the senior players. These were the younger ones that were had established themselves early in 1996, and they didn't even get a shot in 2002. And the De Boers and stuff like that, they're phenomenal players. Bergkamp and that had already burnt out in 2000, and that was the end of that team. So a really good squad.
it was incredible.
It seems to be like
De Boer,
and imagine
he was some Premier League manager.
How well, exactly. But imagine 3 successive tournaments getting beaten pens.
That's awful.
You don't even think, because the always thing was the Germans always win in penalties, the Italians are good in penalties, England are bad in penalties, but you don't think about this Dutch team who got knocked out in 3 successive tournaments on penalties, and it's not like they were short of penalty takers. There's penalty takers all over that damn team there for them 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But a phenomenal Dutch squad that didn't get to the final as well, knocked out in 3 tournaments on pens, and a team that's arguably maybe there would be anybody that's Dutch is listening to this maybe shout at me, but like, a team that could have maybe rivaled the 1988 squad, and that was Holland's only 1980 or 1988 squad that won the Euros. Was the only time that Holland have ever won a major tournament. So.
Yeah.
And with players like that for 4 to 6 years or whatever, and they didn't make a final, which is tough. Like,
it seems like them sort of golden teams that you have, and especially international teams, always sort of come down with a crash at the end or something. Like, it's never really like a fairy tale, ending. They don't.
Like that Belgium team, it's arguably now sort of burnt out. Its golden generation is sort of done. Like, there's still a few players kicking around.
Like, the Euros are this summer, and that is their definite last chance.
Like, a lot of some of the players have already left, like the companies and the like. And you might have a wee bit of life left in Alderweireld, maybe a Vertonghen, and maybe Kevin De Bruyne and Hazard, and
they're all pushing 30 now, like too.
Lukaku, and these boys don't have another big tournament in them, like.
It'll be 2 more years before another World Cup, and there'll be a lot of them fellas gone, or
at the back. Lost a few, like Moussa Dembele in midfield, and I'm sure Fellaini's probably gone, like internationally, and.
It's tough, like, I know it's hard.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's tough to win tournaments internationally, obviously, but a brilliant Dutch squad that never got anywhere either.
Very much so, like that there. I think you have so many great talented individuals in there, like, and obviously they've done well in the tournaments, but they just never seem to have.
So unlucky.
Getting knocked out in penalties 3 times is just.
It's crazy, like.
Like, losing in penalties is harsh because you weren't beaten by a better team. You know what I mean? Like,
and
they ran into big teams there, like they ran into.
Like, you'd rather lose a game 3-0 and well, maybe you wouldn't, like, but
like they got knocked out, and they got knocked out by France, Brazil, and then Italy. So they ran into a few steamrollers there, like, which is tough, and it's sort of all or nothing really when it comes to international football. Like, you either win it or you don't, and you either achieve or you don't.
Brought up a point too. No, it wasn't. It was Tim Sherwood brought up this point. Now, I don't respect either of those two men's football opinions, a lot of things, but they say that it's actually the draw that wins you one of them tournaments. Like a World Cup or an FA Cup, or it's the draw that wins you. It's not your team, like it's who you come up against.
There'll always be somebody that lets you down. There'll always be a team that'll get to a quarter final, and you like maybe say like a Brazil will draw them and have like a handier run into the semis and stuff.
Like those teams, teams you can hit the final of some of them tournaments without facing anyone who's really stiff. Like, you can also hit the final facing every big hitter on the way there. Like,
but they knocked out like a good Argentina team in 1998 as well, and they got favourable wee draws against Yugoslavia back to back, but at the same time, they drew with the teams that knocked them out. Like, they drew with Ronaldo's Brazil in 1988 and got knocked out in pens. They drew with a good Italy side in 2000 as well. And I mean, it's just difficult, like, but a good side that just never got anywhere.
Yeah,
3 top sides here, like.
That's it too.
Very much.
So it was an interesting wee topic that we decided to cover. Just teams that did well, but they could never get across the line, sort of thing. We'll maybe revisit at some stage again. There was another team.
Loads of teams. Like, I had a few in my mind I was thinking about. Although one I was thinking about would take a load of research, but that Hungary team of the 50s that they got the 2 World Cup finals.
Puskás and all.
Puskás and all. Like, it maybe take a bit more research, but a team like that there as well.
Yeah. So, I've mentioned one I was going to maybe think about doing Bayer Leverkusen. They say that had hell week. It was absolutely ridiculous. They got knocked out of 3. They were on for a treble and in 1 week lost everything. That was one. There's a good. It's kind of underrated because you kind of forget, because like in the 90s Brazil won a World Cup and got to a World Cup final, and in the 70s and the 60s and stuff Brazil were a dominant force. But there was an 80s Brazil team which was brilliant as well, but never won anything either. Socrates and Zico and stuff. So a good side as well, but never. Well, I don't know if they won Copa Americas, but Brazil, it's World Cup or nothing for Brazil, and they didn't win one. So, we'll maybe revisit this topic a wee bit later down the line.
Have a wee go at that.
There's going to be if there's any teams that you want us to cover, even put them in the comments below. Get suggestions out there. Let us know what you think, and what other teams you would maybe like us to have a wee look at.
We'll have a look at it.
Teams that haven't won anything and probably should have.
We've got some good ideas. We were kind of spitballing before we came on tonight. We've got a few good wee ideas for topics. I guess we're going to try and change it up. There's different things that we're going to look into, do a wee bit of in-depth research. Maybe not even specifically on the pitch. Maybe a few things off the pitch, and things like that there, you know, maybe
Aye.
down the line. Obviously, we're going to be covering one podcast a month on general football, what's happening now, but we're going to try and talk about things like this. We would have historical topics, and then there's maybe some things we'll talk about off the pitch and things of that nature. But everything's going well, folks. Keep downloading. We have another full week of stuff out.
I do.
Obviously, this is going to be coming out later, so I shouldn't even be saying that. But anyway, no.
And make sure, as always, to like, subscribe.
Yeah, we're going to have
hit the
to.
notification bell on YouTube so you never miss a video, and just die. You know,
Keep up the good work by supporting
Aye.
us. And
keep up the support.
Yeah, we're going to have to be pushy and be like, you know, like it. And
Yeah, and we've kind of tailed off in the last couple of weeks where, you know, we're at the start, obviously, where we're getting a lot of likes, a lot of subscribes, and like a lot of views, and we're sort of tailing off a wee bit. So, you know, one more person, if you're
Viewers.
listening to this here right now and you haven't subscribed, why the hell not?
no, we.
either that or Dave comes after you and you don't want that.
Things
Yeah.
things are going grand. I think at the start and stuff too, we were sort of still fiddling with audio quality. I think a lot of the stuff that's coming out now and from now on will be of better quality,
Yeah.
of better audio. Apparently you can't plug stuff in and have it charging while you're also recording. So there's things we're learning along the way, but we're getting better at it. We're learning about how to edit better and stuff like that there. So we'll be putting out consistent and better content from probably here on out, really. And it's going well, but the downloads mean a lot and stuff like that there. So if you can keep downloading and tell your mates about it too, if they've got any interest in anything we're talking about, you know,
You know,
Spread the word, get in
Spread
touch.
the word.
Get
there's something.
interactive.
I think there's something for it, but you know, there's a bit of everything there. Something maybe for everybody. Like, you know, there's the nerdy
aye,
stuff that
there's-
covers a wide range, and then obviously most of
American
this will be.
sports. You know, if you like NBA, if you like NFL, if you like wrestling, if you
Aye.
like football, if you like movies, TV, video games, or really anything on this
Aye.
planet,
Do you know
there's
what?
something in the Irish Gaze podcast for you.
So get listening now.
Jesus. But no, keep doing what you're doing, people. Obviously it has plateaued a wee bit, but we knew that was going to happen. It was going to spike at the start and then level off a bit. But there's consistent downloads. Our fella from Michigan is still listening.
Is he?
Still listening.
Are you still listening, big man? Good for you. Well, I
Our
hope
friend from Michigan, comment under
Let us
you
know.
know, this video and just let us know.
we don't know anybody from Michigan, like, don't we not?
No.
no.
So it's not like a relative or something.
no.
Right, fair enough. But
I don't think I know anybody.
At all.
There's somebody from Georgia's downloaded a couple as well. So
Is it?
aye,
Well,
so
here, there you go. That's your weekly mission. Well, I don't know if you're listening to, you know.
I'm proud of you that you're even downloading consistently and understanding what the hell we're saying.
Aye. Like,
So you're doing all right so far.
is he downloading the football podcast?
It doesn't specifically tell us which
Right.
ones, but every time one of these comes out,
Aye.
there's an extra one from Michigan. Like, so I don't know.
Right. Well, you know,
But
keep
aye.
at it, whoever you are. Imagine it was somebody we do know, and like, you know, we didn't know they were there.
Matt Stafford. Yeah, thanks very much. Keep downloading, give us feedback, all that. Carry on. Instagram, Irish Gaze Podcast. Twitter, Irish Gaze Podcast. Like it, share it, comment.
We
keep
love you all.
downloading, and thanks very much for listening, folks.
Oh,
Everybody say
here, hey.
goodbye.
Oh, here, hey, good luck now.
Good luck.
Cheers. Thank you.